Nova felt the crystal walls of her starship rumble, warning of some kind of impending peril. How was it that unicorns made such great pilots, but such terrible mechanics? She was running out of ideas, and her co-pilot, Nebulon, was less help than nothing at all. He sat at the not-so-distant pilot's seat and called back. "Any luck back there? Our window through the black hole is closing, you know." "I'm doing everything I can, Nebulon." "I'm just saying, if we don't make it now, it could be weeks before another tunnel opens for us." Nova rolled her eyes, then pushed a few strands of her glittering mane from her face. Another couple of weeks alone on the ship with him might well leave her insane as a Pegasus. Wackos. Maybe if she were to pull the ship's main capacitor free from its harness, she might be able to position it better. Reaching in, she pushed on the capacitor, giving it a twist. The connection was just fine, that was for sure. The electric shock that rang through her hoof and leg was evidence enough of that. She yanked back, smacking the back of her head against the hard interior of the ship. "Flares!" she grumbled. "What was that? Did you say something?" came a shout from the cockpit. Nova scrunched her white snout, her lip curling. Then he continued. "You fix it yet?" Nova turned her head swiftly, eyes fiery. "You want to trade jobs?" It was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Nah, you've got it." She shook her head, the area behind the horn a little sore. No help, no help at all. The walls shook again, light dancing from the crystal around her. She stared at the control board, wishing she'd paid better attention in training during the semester when the instructors had focused on internal guts of the starships. Moments later, Nebulon piped up with what he felt to be a superb idea. "Have you tried bypassing the diamond coupler?" "The diamond coupler? What makes you think something is wrong with the coupler?" she shouted back. The compact space where the control board was located made turning around to relay messages back and forth very uncomfortable. He didn't respond anyway. Diamond coupler. What an idiotic notion. The walls decided to quake once more, this time more urgent and violent than the last. "Nova?" came an anxious cry from Nebulon. I know! Panic, like a tiny splinter, began to enter into one of her hearts. The main one, not the one that pumped magic through her alicorn. Worry set in. "We can't get star boost with the ship acting like this," Nebulon called. "I'm working on it. You don't think I know that we need boost to pass through the black hole? What am I, a centaur? I'm not stupid." Dealing with high pressure had not always been her strong suit. Her eyes raced along the board, landing on a separate access panel. She knew what lay behind it. The diamond coupler. She could try it. It was still a dumb idea, but she was fresh out of good ones. The ship's walls rocked, furious, threatening to break wide open. "Flares!" she mumbled, taking hold of the panel, tugging it hard, the flat cover landing on the ground. She found the coupler and did the job. It sparked as she bypassed the first of two connection points. Halfway there. If this didn't work, well, she didn't want to think about that. Please, she thought. Just a little luck would go a long way. The walls shook harder. Did she hear a cracking sound? Or was that her imagination? She attached the second point. The rumble turned to a quiver, then fell to a basic humming. "Hey, you did it!" Nova shifted her eyes from one wall to the other, waiting, almost daring them to shake again. After a few seconds, she breathed a sigh of relief. She replaced the panel cover and found her way back to her seat alongside Nebulon. He glanced at her with his round eyes. His darker coloring was a contrast to hers and was rare among their kind. "What did you do back there?" he asked. She took hold of her control and ignored him. After a second, he looked her way again, sensing that she was intentionally opting to offer no response. "You bypassed the diamond coupler, didn't you?" Nova stared forward and mumbled something. It was, wasn't it? The coupler. Finally, she relented. All right, yes. It was the coupler. Flares, you think you know everything. Is the star boost working now, or what? She asked. Nebulon smirked to himself, shifting in his seat, head held a little higher. The celebration was short-lived, for as soon as he glanced at the light reading on the instrument display, he saw a flashing warning. Uh-oh, that's not good, he muttered. Nova whipped her head. What's not good? As she spoke the words, the starship powered forward like an all-consumed maniac. They were both pressed back into their pilot seats, fighting the force of the rapid acceleration. What's happening? Nova shouted. Nebulon struggled to keep a handle on his control. It's the star boost. It seems to be stuck on wide open. I can't stop it. Nova shook her head. Is that something the diamond coupler regulates? Nebulon cried back. Now that you mention it, yes. Yes, it is. Flares, she grumbled. How far are we from the black hole? 200 units, and closing fast. What do we do? She asked. Nebulon shook his head, dread covering his face. As bad as Nova was at dealing with high pressure, her co-pilot was worse. If they were going to make this shot, she would have to take the lead. All right. Let's just think. We'll have plenty of boost to make that jump. That's not the problem. The problem will be what happens when we come out the other side. If we are still powering at full star boost, we'll burn up or crash into the base. Right, he called back. How much is left in the boost tank? He glanced at his reading. About 3 levels. His eyes then trailed off again, and his lips began to mouth something that Nova couldn't quite make out. She ran a math equation in her head. It was complicated. That was way too much boost. She knew that much. She couldn't reverse the bypass of the coupler. They'd be right back at the problem they started with. The shaking walls. Stay calm, she thought. Her eyes wandered to her companion. He was shaking with nerves. Flares. And what was he saying? He was whispering something to himself on repeat. Over and over. Quiet, but getting louder. Finally, she heard him. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. Nova said nothing. Better to just leave that alone. Back to the problem at hand. They were stuck with the star boost. Then an idea sprang to her mind. She tapped on the control near her, pulling up the flight map. She was running out of time. Her eyes flashed over the map, back and forth, all the while, a growing chant from her companion. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. Her eyes followed a course. Yes, it just might work. Nova shot forward, flipping a switch that gave her control of the starship. Hang on! I've got a flight path that should burn our boost, leaving us just enough to make the jump home. It was a wild idea. Crazy, maybe. Her calculations, once done entirely in her mind, would have to be spot on. Too little, and they'd be swallowed in the whole. Too much, and they'd be left crispy. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. There was no time to program the flight into the computer. It wouldn't like the route anyway, and would argue that it wasn't an efficient path. Nova pulled left, then right. Their speed made every turn something of a challenge. Precision, balance, focus. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. The tune started to stick in her head, becoming a theme song for the flight. She started to hum with it, embracing it, keeping her calm. Her eyes glanced at the boost tank. 2 levels. It was working. She hung on, cranking past comets, moons, and other space obstacles. The song rang in her mind. 1 level. Half. A quarter. Now! She exclaimed, rounding a curve, headed straight for the black hole. Almost there. The boost gauge was nearly empty. Would it be enough? Too much? Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows! The starship soared through the black hole, passed through the infinite space tunnel, and shot out the other side. Nova held her breath. A flashing light lit the screen. Boost tank empty. Their base came into view. Silence. No more song. They'd made it. She'd done it. Nova leaned back in her seat, realizing that her muscles had been clenched everywhere. A moment passed. Then Nebulon slowly turned his horned head and said, "I told you that you've got it." Nova exhaled with a smile and said, "Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows?" Nebulon blushed. "I gotta stop watching so much YouTube." Thank you for listening to this production of Unicorns in Space. An odd story, yes, but one that hits on multiple elements of what goes into a short story. If you caught any of these elements, comment below for extra credit. Griff thanks you for listening to this story.